Hello and welcome to part 2 of my 12 book project vlog. I will link my TBR in the first part down below in case you're interested in those, but essentially for 2023 I wanted to do like kind of a project of recommended books. I had 12 people recommend me 12 different books to read, and then essentially I'm just doing one a month until the end of the year and I've read them all. So I did do the first 6 in that first vlog, which like I said, down below in case you're interested, but now I am on to the second half of this project. So of the 6 books I have to read, I'll go over them real quick since now I actually know what's in the vlog. I have Endymion Spring by Michael Skelton, Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, Exhalation by Ted Chiang, The Book of Lost Things by Connolly, and Caledonia by Elspeth. And then I've got the 6th one, which is my current read and what I'm opening the vlog with, and that is Miss Benson's Beetle by Joyce, which was recommended to me by Charlie Brooke Reads. This is a historical fiction book about an older woman, she's like 50-ish, who is a Spencer living in London after World War II. It's the 50s, and she decides she's going to go to New Caledonia and find a golden beetle that may or may not exist. And she wants to do this because it reminds her of her father, who committed suicide during the First World War. And it's kind of sad so far, but I feel like it's gonna get lighter or weirder as it goes along. It has like that vibe. It's gonna be just like a little bit like quirky and weird. So far, not very far in, but did want to update just to say that I'm reading it and give a description. But so far it is like really, really enjoyable. I like the writing. I like the story, I like the characters, like I'm invested. This is gonna be like, I assume this is gonna be like at worst 4 stars, but I'm having a very good time so far. I don't mean to be dramatic, but it has been like 2 months. I have finished this though, and it did not take me 2 months to finish it. I think it took me 2 days to finish this. It's September. My apologies. I had kind of a rough summer, so I just kind of like didn't update, didn't do anything. But I have finished Miss Benson's Beetle. I gave it 4 stars, just like I thought I would. It's a really well written book. The characters really well developed. There's like a little bit of like secondhand cringe that I didn't particularly love, just because like I cringe very easily at things, and there was like a little bit of that in this book. But it was just really good. Like, it was a little bit quirkier than like what I normally go for, and a little bit like funnier. But like, I did kind of get the humor. I did find it amusing and like really good. So fantastic. It reminded me a lot of Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine, just in terms of tone and the main character and how it's kind of like a little bit like quirky and like funny, haha, and like she's kind of like different, you know? But it's really, really dark. Like, it has that darkness underneath that Eleanor Oliphant had, where it's just like really tragic and sad actually, but still like kind of odd. It was lighter than Eleanor Oliphant, but like general same vibes for me, and I really enjoyed both of them. This was wonderful. Like, this was just such a good read, so I'm really glad I read it. It was like I think it took me like 2 sittings to read. I was gonna post updates, and then I just wound up kind of sitting there and just like reading the entire book, you know? Like, I just kept going and was having such a good time. Like, this is a very like good time read, but still has like enough gravitas to like mean something. So fantastic. Highly recommend. Like, this was wonderful. I don't know how much staying power it has for me. Like, I really, really enjoyed it, but it is just like, I don't know if I will think about this book in a year, you know? Like, my true favorite books, like sometimes I see them and I'm just like thinking about how wonderful they were and just like, oh yeah, like that was like a real favorite, and like I'm thinking about this and it's just like, this was a really good read, but like I don't know if it has much power to it of just like months later, am I still thinking about it? Probably not, but it was really, really good. I highly recommend this. This was a very worthwhile addition to this video. I need to continue because it is September. I skipped August, which means I'm a book behind. I have 5 books to read in the next 4 months, so wish me luck. I don't know what I'm reading next. I have Exhalation by Ted Chiang right here, actually. I have Exhalation by Ted Chiang. It's a short story collection, so I don't know if I'm going to be reading that next, but like I've already had to renew it once from the library, so I will quite possibly be reading this very, very soon. This should be my next book, I think. Fingers crossed. It's the middle of October. I have 5 books left to read. I have finally started Exhalation by Ted Chiang, which was recommended to me by Reading with Tatiana. I will link her channel down below. Same with everyone. It's very dark. I kept meaning to update that I was reading this book, and then I never did. But that's fine, because it's not like I've gotten very far into it. I read the first 2 short stories, and to be honest, I was not overly impressed with the first short story. It was fine. Like, it was like a 3-star story, but it didn't really do anything that made me interested. You know, like, I read it a couple weeks ago now, to be perfectly honest, and I don't really remember it that well. It was just one of those things that, like, I read it, it was fine, like, kind of time travel-y stuff, like, eh. The second one was very, very interesting, so I have high hopes going forward to read the rest of this book. I read short story collections slowly, so I will update with my thoughts, but the second story, Exhalation, the, you know, titular story, so good, so interesting. It's basically a commentary on, like, robots and life, and, like, what makes life, and, like, what, I don't know, it's very, very interesting. So I did thoroughly enjoy that one, and I am looking forward to continuing on, because I just hear constant wonderful things about Ted Chiang, and I've never read him, but I really like the movie Arrival that was based on one of his stories. So not from this book, from a different book, but very, very excited to continue. I've read a lot more of Exhalation. I'm getting pretty close to the end, which is great, because this is actually due at the library in like 2 days. So I do actually need to get this done, and I have 2 stories left. I'm really enjoying this. Like, everything that, hello Splurt, everything that everyone says about him is true. Like, these are really interesting, really well done stories that just are like, they explore such interesting concepts, and each one is like different, and it brings up different questions, and they're all very well developed and very just like sad, but not like sad, more like contemplative sad, which I really enjoy. And he spends a lot of time, like, I'm trying to think, they're a lot about like language and humanity and agency, and like what it means to be alive, and what it means to remember, and what it means to like exist. Like, I don't know, they're very, very interesting. So there's that. I think the only thing I'm struggling with kind of is that as much as I am enjoying them in the moment, splurt, I'm finding that they're fading very quickly for me. Like, I'm reading them and I'm really enjoying them, and they're so great, but then I am feeling like I forget them pretty easily, and I'm reading them the way I like to read short stories, which is one at a time, and then like taking a break, you know. Like, I'm not reading more than one of these a day, because I like to space it out so that I can like think and reflect on them. And it's just like, they're not sticking around. Like, I find them so immersive in the moment and so like thought-provoking, and then like I put it away and I do something else, and like 10 minutes later it's like all of those feelings have faded. So I'm not sure why I'm not like as in love with this as I want to be, but it's still like really fantastic. So yeah, I will be finishing this today, tomorrow, probably tomorrow. I finally finished Exhalation, and I'm sitting in the library parking lot right now because it's literally due today. So finished it just in the nick of time. This was lovely. Like, I'm so happy I read this. Like, this is just as good as everyone says. Like, the way I hear everyone describing his books made sense for this, and it's how I would describe them. They're very thought-provoking. They're very interesting. They're very sad, but not like sad. I don't know. I had a really good time with the vast majority of these stories. Like, there were a couple that didn't hit me super hard, but like the majority of them were fantastic. And like, I definitely finished this knowing that I will eventually read more from him, because I know he has at least one other collection that gets really good reviews. So and I know that one's one of the stories in that collection is actually what the movie Arrival is based on, and I really, really loved Arrival. Like, I loved the way it played with language and like humanity and all of that, and like a lot of the stories in this book played with language and memory and humanity and agency, and it's very, very interesting. My only negatives for this was that I felt like his writing style created a distance between the reader and the story, which like makes sense, and I feel like that worked really well for like the stories he was telling. I just like to feel very close to my stories. I like to feel like I'm there and I'm experiencing it, and not like I'm kind of further away like I did in this book, which I mean was fine. Like, these were great. Like, I don't think it's not like that made them awful or anything. That was just something that made it a little bit harder for me to connect. And I did kind of struggle with just like, they don't have a lot of staying power for me. And I'm not sure why, because they are very interesting and very well done. And he has a lot of great discussions on like broad topics that like are very, very nuanced. And I don't know, I just feel like as soon as I finished the story, it was kind of like gone. But I thoroughly enjoyed this. If you're looking for like some speculative sci-fi, I would highly recommend this, and probably whatever else he's done, because they all had like a similar vibe, and it was wonderful. I really, really enjoyed this. So I have started Oh Caledonia by Elspeth Barker, which was recommended to me by Reading This Life. It's the end of October. I've just started, so I may or may not finish this in October. I'm trying to catch up so that I get these done by the end of the year. I have a few left. But I have started this. Thoughts. Not very far in. Essentially, this 16-year-old has been murdered, and she is blamed for her death. And it is historical fiction, set during World War II. It's Gothic literature. I don't really know what that means, to be perfectly honest. I know that's referred to in literature a lot, but I've never bothered Googling it, so I just move on with my life. But essentially, this 16-year-old girl has been murdered, and you find that out in the prologue, and then you kind of go through her life in the rest of the book, kind of leading up to the murder. And I think it's supposed to be like sad and haunting and like beautiful and whatever. It feels very overwritten so far. I'm really struggling with that. I think a part of that is definitely because the last two books I read were very like straightforward nonfiction. Like, one was a children's biography that was very simply written, and then the true crime book I'm reading is very factual. Like, here's the information and not a whole lot more. So I think it is definitely an adjustment going into this and having it be like very beautiful, very like, I don't know, like flowery writing, and it's like a lot. So I don't know how much of that is just like I need to adjust to this and how much is I don't really like it, but I am curious where it's gonna go, because it is just kind of like her life at this moment, and I don't know if I'm enjoying it or not. I'm gonna need time. This is definitely a book that requires time, but we'll continue reading. We'll update you. I'd like to finish this today, because it's like less than 200 pages, so like let's just fly through it. Let's have a good time. Let's enjoy this. I really want to like this. It's set in Scotland, hence the title, which, not gonna lie, I had to Google that. Apparently that's just Scotland, for a variety of historical reasons, but apparently that just means Scotland. So it's set in Scotland during World War II and after World War II. I think like 40s, 50s, maybe 60s, maybe, we'll see. I don't know. But yes, this young girl gets murdered, and we shall find out why. I have read a lot more of Oh Caledonia. Let me move my computer. There we go. It's darker, but at least there's no glare. I read more of Oh Caledonia. I'm a little more than halfway. I'm like just over 100 pages, and it has taken me hours to get here. Like, it's just such a slow read, and like I don't really know why. Like, it's not terrible. it's also not great. Like, I just don't get it. And usually I like, kind of slow lifestyle type stories that are just like this girl's life. I've read a few of those recently that I really loved, like A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And it's like, normally I'm like really into that. And with this, it's just like, I don't care. Like, why am I reading this? This kid kind of seems like a brat. And I don't mean to be rude, but like, she's kind of annoying and unrelatable. And like, I'm not really on her side. And I feel like you're supposed to be. And I'm just kind of struggling. And I mean, it's not bad. Like, the writing is fine. I do think it's like too flowery for me. And like, both the writing and the story fall a little bit on the side of like too pretentious for me. But like, they're not bad. Like, I feel like this is gonna be like a 3-star read. Because I'm hoping the ending will kind of draw it together for me a little bit. Because books like this tend to do that. But I don't know. I'm just like, I'm struggling. Which is sad, because this is the first book I've read for this whole project that I've kind of been like, not really into this one. But we'll see. Maybe like the last 80 pages will get better, because it's less than 200 pages. I've probably got like 90 left or something. Like, maybe it'll end strong. I finished Caledonia. It took me an extra day to get through just like the very last 40 pages. Not my favorite. Like, I gave it 3 stars. I don't think it was bad by any means, but I do think this is one of those books where to enjoy it, you have to enjoy the writing style, and I didn't. It was too flowery for me. I do enjoy a very lyrical, beautiful style, but this was a little bit too flowery, a little bit too overwritten, and I found myself having to like go through and reread a lot. Like, I'd read a paragraph and just, I'd be like, what did she just say? Like, she had so many words to say so little. And sometimes that can work really well for me. Like, I'm not gonna lie and be like, I want things to be brief and to the point. Like, I can really enjoy a beautiful style, but it felt excessive and not in a really good way. And then in terms of the story itself, it was fine, but it didn't do a whole lot for me. It was just kind of the tragedy of this young girl's life after World War II, and culminating in her early death at 16, her murder. And it was just kind of like everything in her life, and it was very sad, but in a kind of just like, I didn't care way. Like, it wasn't bad. Like, I do want to say that. Like, it was fine. It was perfectly fine. It was less than 200 pages. I think if this had been like a 400-page book, it probably would have irritated me. But at 188 pages, it was fine for what it was. It didn't leave me feeling very much, and it didn't leave me very invested. And like, this is one that I feel like is going to fade incredibly quickly for me. Like, give it a week and I probably won't have remembered that I read this. I don't know. I feel sad. This is the first book I've read for this project that's been very much on the lower end. Like, it's not the first 3-star I've given, but it's the first 3-star where I walk away kind of feeling like I didn't need to read that one. So that's a little disappointing, but this was fine. It was an interesting little book. It was very different. It just wasn't for me. So I have begun Endymion Spring by Matthew Skelton, which was recommended to me by Matilda Gothica. This is a middle grade fantasy novel that's set half in like the 1400s in Germany and then half in present day, about a boy at Oxford. I am a little bit shy of 100 pages right now, so I don't have many thoughts. I'm still like very confused as to like what the story is. It just seems largely about kind of printing books, and like printing books in medieval times, and also potentially selling your soul to the devil seems like maybe a thing. That's like a rumor of something what happened, and this seems like the kind of book where like it might be about that. But essentially it's about an apprentice whose name is Endymion Spring to a book printer in medieval times in Germany, and it's kind of about, I haven't read much in time, so I don't really know what's going on there. But the present day section is about a boy who's at Oxford because his mother's a professor, and she's like visiting, researching, studying, I don't know, doing whatever professors do when they temporarily go places. And he and his sister were kind of dragged along because their parents are at a rocky point in their marriage. And it's kind of just like he finds this book that is blank. Like, there's nothing written in it. The only thing on it is Endymion Spring, which he finds out is like the name of like this person from the past. And it's kind of just about that. Like I said, I still don't really know what's going on in this at like 100 pages, but it's one of those books that like I feel like it's all gonna come together. It's just gonna take a minute, but I am working on this. It's a decently thick book, but it is middle grade. It's going by really quick, so well, I say it's middle grade. It might be like on the young YA end of things. Either way, it's meant for a young person, so I'm getting through it pretty quick, and it is like enjoyable. I'm not 100% sold on it yet, but I think that's mostly just because like I don't know what's going on. So like, give me a minute and I will come back with my thoughts. I have made good progress on Endymion Spring. I'm probably like 2/3 of the way through it, and I do actually understand what's happening now, and it's very enjoyable. Like, it's one of those kids' books that's just like a book about magic books and like kind of the love of literature, and like it ties in a lot of history to it. I don't think I mentioned before, but when they're talking about printing books in the 15th century, one of the people involved is Gutenberg, like of the Gutenberg Bible acclaim. And there's also tying in Faust to this, and I've actually like done some googling and like reading Wikipedia, because it's like I remember Faust, but I can't really like place him in the context of history and legends and all. So I did do some googling, and I don't know, I feel like it's a little bit odd for children, because like when I was, you know, age appropriate for this book, which I would guess is like young YA, probably like 13ish, 14 maybe, I maybe would have known who Gutenberg was, but like maybe, but like not Faust at all. Like, it's kind of weird to tie in so much history that I feel like is largely unknown for children, but not bad. But I do feel like you do kind of need to know the context for what they're talking about, otherwise it doesn't fully make sense. But it is kind of lovely. Like, I've definitely gotten to a point where I'm very invested in the story, and it's gotten a little bit creepy, and there are villains, and like, I don't know, it's very enjoyable. It's kind of not my thing. Like, I don't really go for like the book about magic books for children, like that kind of vibe, because I know there are a number of those, like Inkheart and stuff like that, and people really love them, and that's never really been my thing. But this is a lot of fun, so I'm going to probably finish this up, and then I will come back with my final thoughts and ratings, but it's a good time. I have finished Endymion Spring. Huzzah. I gave this 3 stars. It was very fun. I had a good time, and it was such a quick read. Like, it was just like really easily written in that way where it's like so enjoyable to just sit there and read like 200 straight pages. Like, it flows so well. So that was really fun. I think my biggest issue with this was mostly just that it wasn't my thing. Magical like book about books and like especially children's, like those books have never really appealed to me. Like, books that are about like magic libraries, or like traveling through books, or like books that take over your soul or whatever, like that's just never really been my thing. Those have never appealed to me, so like I don't know, it's not for me. But it was fun and enjoyable and very interesting. Like, I liked the characters, I liked following them. I wish there had been more of this book set in the past, because I don't think we got very much of the past timeline, and I felt like so many of things that happened in the 15th century about Endymion Spring and Gutenberg and Fust were very interesting things that were happening, but you didn't spend enough time with them to like really develop them properly. And I wanted more from that, because it was so interesting and there could have been so much more, but the majority of the book takes place in the present. The past was also the timeline that confused me the most, where it was like the hardest to follow what was going on, but it was very, very interesting, and I wish there'd been more of the past, but I did really enjoy the present. I liked Blake. He was a cool kid. I liked his little sister Doug. They had a really cute relationship, and I felt like you could see Blake growing up throughout the book and starting to see adults as like people instead of just like grown-ups. That was really cute and sweet, and it was just like fun magic and like fun all around. I did read the ARC, so I don't know how that differs from like the final printed copy, if at all, but like it was a really good time. Like it was only 3 stars, but it was like a good 3 stars. Like, you know, when you read that book and it's like it's 3 stars, but like I had a good time with it, so I'm gonna count this as a victory. I did quite enjoy it, actually. I have started The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly, which was recommended by my boyfriend. So, book 11 of 12, we are approaching the end. And let's just talk about this for a second. How far in am I? 144 pages, which is a bit further than I would usually like update that I'm reading one of these books. But you know what? I'm really glad that I waited 144 pages, because I thought this was middle grade. Like, it looks like middle grade. It sounds like middle grade. The kid in this is like pretty young. I think he's like 12 to 14, which is like closer to middle grade than YA. And like the first few pages, like the first chunk of it, honestly, is like him dealing with anxiety and grief, and like it's really written in a way that kind of seems like it's geared towards children. And I'm over here like calling this middle grade in every video, and no one corrected me. So I read this, I'm thinking it's middle grade, and then all of a sudden there's a child who has been raped and murdered. And it's not super explicit, but it's like, you know what happened. And I was like, huh, that seems dealt with in a way that's a little bit dark for this children's book. And then like there's child abuse, and I was like, well, you know, like it's historical fiction. Like historically child abuse was like, I don't know, more accepted, and like it's nothing too bad. And I was like, it's still, you know, middle grade. And then came the bestiality, and I was like, this, I don't think this is middle grade. Like, this woman just had sex with a wolf, and like that's not an exaggeration, it's not a metaphor. It wasn't a humanoid wolf, it wasn't a magical wolf, it was just a wolf that she thought was hot, I guess. So that's where I'm at. I don't mind like dark, gruesome horror things. I just kind of wish that I'd been expecting that going into this book, because like I thought this was going to be a lovely children's portal fantasy book, kind of, you know, similar to Narnia. Like, it's portal fantasy, he goes into this world of books, and like it's gonna be one of those magic books about, I really thought this was gonna be like Endymion Spring. Like, that's kind of what I was expecting. I was like, oh no, I'm reading these both in the same month, like they're gonna be two like middle grade book within a book type magic deals. This is not that. I mean, like, technically yes, he does go into a book, but it is like horror. I think it's still like teen literature, and it's weird because it is written in a way that like would be so good for children, like the way it deals with grief and anxiety. And I was like, I get it. I was like, this is so good for children. And then it's like, no. It's not bad, to be honest, now that I'm like readjusting my perspective. It's a little bit kind of on the edgelord side of things for me. I get why my boyfriend liked this growing up, which I will say, growing up, he told me he read this when he was young, and he really liked this when he was young, and like, I'm not sure he used the word child, but I thought he did. I thought this was like one of his favorites from childhood. This was published in 2006, so you were 15 if you read it immediately when it was published. Like, this, I feel like he knew what I thought this book was and didn't correct me, which I'm kind of salty about. But I am reading this. Mostly it's about this kid during World War II and the London Blitz, and very, like, it has very Narnia-esque vibes at the beginning, and, like, his mother dies and he's dealing with, like, anxiety and grief, and it's really interesting, and then he starts getting, like, these weird spells and, like, fairy tale things. Like, he's really into fairy tales, and then, like, he winds up going into a fairy tale-esque type story deal, and, like, there's all these, like, fairy tale characters and stuff, but in a very, like, twisted way. Like, again, with the Little Red Riding Hood. Yeah. So, that's what this is. And it's, like, very horror-esque, and, like, I don't know. It doesn't seem too fond of women, to be honest, but it's written in a really, like, easy to read, enjoyable way, and like I said, now that I am adjusting to what this is, I do enjoy it. I'm gonna see where it goes, because I am curious how well he deals with women throughout this book, because, like, so far, not great. But it might just be that, like, we haven't met any real female characters yet. But I am curious. So I'm gonna keep reading this. I will probably update in a bit. It's like 450 pages or something. Maybe a little shy of that. A little more than that. Like 468 pages. So it's honestly like a really quick read though. Like, it's the kind of book I can sit down and read like 100+ pages in an hour if I'm paying attention. So I'm gonna go do that, make some progress, and hopefully when I come back I will have more things to say other than there's a lot of bestiality and this isn't middle grade. So I've made more progress. There's a whole lot of murder in this. Like, so much murder. Just, like, so much brutal murder. Like, you meet someone and they're just murdered. Like, every single person you meet. It's, like, wild. Beyond that, I am enjoying it. It's just, like, I'm trying to think. It's very, like, short and abrupt, kind of. It's like a quest story. He's going on this quest and he meets a villain, a bad guy, whatever, and, like, you know, you gotta fight the bad guy and then win and then move on into a new bad guy who you fight and then win and then move on. And it's just like there's so many of them, and it just feels like he's, you know, he fights this bad guy and it ends in like this brutal killing that's just like absolutely gruesome and horrific, and then like the chapter's over and it's never mentioned again, and it doesn't really mean a whole lot in the scheme of things. And I don't love that. Like, I don't love that kind of like abruptness where there's just like so many plot points happening and like they don't feel cohesive. It's just very quest-like, and I don't love quest stories. But apart from that, I am enjoying it. I'm like 2/3 maybe. It's a really quick read. It's really fun. Like, it is gruesome and dark, but like in an enjoyable way. And I'm curious what's gonna happen, but it's also just like not to my taste, I think. But I don't know, I'm on the border between 3 and 4 stars now, but I'm making a lot of good progress. So I finished the Book of Lost Things. Didn't really intend to finish it. I stopped there. And that is the ending. There's just like 130 pages of like notes and like his discussions on the fairy tales that he brought into the book and kind of twisted, and sometimes I'm interested in that, but for this book I'm not interested. That's a lot. Like, I knew there were gonna be some notes, but like, Jesus, that's a lot. So yeah, that's the split, which is, I don't know. This book was a ride. I'm trying to think of the best thing to say about this. I gave it 4 stars, and I do think part of that was because even when I wasn't enjoying every aspect of it, I thought it was really well done. It was like really artfully designed. like the characters and kind of the morals that he was going with. And in some ways it was really obvious, and in other ways it was subtle, and like it was really beautiful. Did not always love the kind of like way he kind of leaned into like the edgelord thing a little bit. Like, it's weird because this book was not really graphic at all. There were a few scenes, like the occasional like little bit of graphic whatever, but for the most part, despite how dark and brutal this was and how like he went there whenever possible, it wasn't really graphic. Like, he was very direct with what was happening, but it wasn't ever like gross to read, you know? Let's move the camera back a bit. I was feeling claustrophobic. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it, because like he would have like a couple of paragraphs just describing how the crooked man, who is like the villain of this world, would torture people, and he would go in on how he would pick someone, like an adult, a man or a woman who had a large family, and he would one by one murder every single person in their family, and like no matter how much they screamed and cried and pled with him, he would murder them all, and then he would lock them away in a dungeon to like drive themselves crazy. And like that's basically about how he said it, and it's like that is absolutely horrific, but it's also not graphic or gory at all. And this book did not vibe as very gory. It was so dark, like unbelievably dark, but not gory. So interesting. I don't know, I'm going with 4 stars because I do think it was really well done, and I do get why people would love this, and I do think it was really not for me, but I enjoyed a lot of what he was doing despite that, and I think that kind of pushed me over the edge of like, it's not just that I enjoyed this, and it's not just that I thought it was well done, it's that I shouldn't have liked this, you know, and I did, and I think that's a testament to him and how much he put into this, and like you could tell he really put his heart into this. And I don't know, it could have been dialed back some, because like there were so many scenes where he would just discuss like the absolute brutality and torture of someone, and it was just like it contributed nothing. And then there were like there's the quest like atmosphere, or not atmosphere, the quest like vibe throughout the book that I never quite got on with, just because I'm not really into quest stuff. And it did feel like there was too much of like, this thing happened and then it got immediately dropped, and then this next thing happened and then like was never brought up again, and it like should have been. I like for things to develop more like cohesively than like an element at a time. But yeah, I would recommend this if you like. This is definitely for teens. Like, I feel like the ideal audience for this book is like a 14-year-old who is into really dark stuff, because I think this offers that while being totally age appropriate, and like offering kind of like, I don't know, I think kind of like these fleeting shadows, there was a little bit of a sincerity to this that I enjoyed. I feel like that might be the kind of horror I like. Horror with like a good dose of sincerity to it. Maybe I need to look into that next year. But yeah, I did like it. Not my favorite by any means, but I think it was a worthwhile read, and it was a very interesting read, and it was very different than what I would normally read. But I fully understand why this is one of my boyfriend's favorites, because this just screams him. This screams him. So yay, I finished. So 11 books down, and now I will be moving on to the final book, which is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. And fun fact, I swear, at the beginning of this year, I checked all of these books at my local library, and I was like, let's see what the library has and what the library doesn't have, so that I can, you know, order stuff. Because I did wind up buying 2 of the books off this list, because the library didn't have them. And I swear, they had Assassin's Apprentice, and I went to go check it out from the library, like on their website, to put it on hold. The library didn't have it, so this is going to be a project. I belong to a couple of different libraries, so one of them has to have it, But I will update when I have the book, because worst case scenario, I will have to buy it, which I really wasn't planning to buy anything else this year, but I will find a copy of that come December, and I will be reading it. It is December 31st, and I am actually live streaming right now because I did get a copy of Assassin's Apprentice, and I have started it, so I have until midnight if I want to actually officially complete this challenge. I'm trying my best. So, this is Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which is the first book in the Farseer trilogy. It is a high fantasy series that was originally published in the 90s, and it's about a young boy who is the illegitimate son of a prince in the kingdom, and as he has royal blood, he is kind of taken into the palace and I assume becomes an assassin at like 80 pages in, and he has become the apprentice to an assassin. So we shall see. But this was recommended to me by Abby of Pelennor, and it's really good so far. Like, I get why people like it, like why it has so much hype, because it's just like a very easy to enjoy book. It's just like really well done in every capacity. Like, the writing flows so well, and it's just like such an easy read, you know, like it's so quickly absorbing, and like the characters are really well done, and I'm curious about what's gonna happen. It's a little bit slow so far, which like I'm 100% down with. So I'm 80 pages in, and like he's only just met the assassin, so I don't really know where it's going from here, but I'm making good progress, and I'm hoping I can get this done by midnight, just to finish the challenge on time. I must briefly update, out of obligation. I have made significant progress in this book. It's still the 31st. I'm gonna get it done today, probably. This is really good. I don't remember what I said in that last clip, but I was only 80 pages in, and now I'm, what, like, almost 300? 292. So there's a little bit of romance now, which I like. There's a lot of dark intrigue. There's a little bit of politics, but I do kind of wish she spent more time developing the politics, because like it's there in the background, but I feel like this book needs a little bit more of it. And I think some of the story is like a little bit too like generic fantasy for me, but I'm not certain if it feels generic, because it is like, I don't want to call it a classic because it's from the 90s, but it's such a well-known piece of fantasy literature that it's might just be the same reaction I had when I saw Silence of the Lambs for the first time, where I was like, this feels like I've seen it a million times before. Because I have, because it's been ripped off by everything. And it's just like unfortunate that I'm seeing an earlier version after so many of the later versions. And I might be having a similar reaction to this book, but it's also like not that old. It's like 30 years old. Like, I don't know. Some of the things in it do feel kind of generic, but her writing is so wonderful that I feel like she pulls it together really well. And I am really enjoying it. It's really compelling. And I'm having, honestly, a really easy time getting through it, even though it's 450 pages. So, apologies for this being a short section, but I will update once I finished it tonight, because I will complete this project in 2023, and I will feel very proud of myself. It's January 4th at like 3 o'clock in the morning, but I finished this on December 31st. I did, I swear. I spent 9 hours live streaming this book and me reading it, and it was a very, very long day, and it was very exhausting. But I finished it, and it is wonderful, just like the many millions of people who have read Robin Hobb have said. I assume. I don't know. She's one of those authors that everyone is like, oh yeah, she's really good. And I'm like, I'll try her sometime. And I read her and it's like, oh yeah, she's really good. Like, yeah, she's really good. The writing, fantastic. Her writing style kind of reminds me of Lisa Gardner a little bit, who's a thriller writer, just in the way that the writing itself flows so well and is so easy to read and so compelling in like a really skillful way. Like it just immediately draws you in and makes you forget that you're reading, and like I really enjoyed that. I did give it 4 stars. It was just like a little bit generic at points, I felt. Like not hugely generic, but I found myself sitting here and being like, I've seen this trope many times before. And I'm not even a fantasy reader, you know? Like I've read some fantasy, not much fantasy. And it's like so many aspects of this book felt really familiar. I swear I had some other thoughts, but my mind is going blank. There were points where the plot kind of lost me a little bit. Like, not that I was confused or I didn't like it, just there were points where I didn't care as much as I really felt like I should be caring. And I don't know, there were parts I would have liked to have been explored more. Like, some of the politics that was very important to the story, I wish they'd spent more time delving into it and just like really giving it the time and development it deserved and really needed. But it was just like a really good book. And also animal death. Like, why does this keep happening to all his dogs? Like, I just multiple times unpleasant. And then there were things that were like super obvious, like that I thought were kind of understood, and then the main character would show up and be like, wait, this is the thing? And we'd have a whole conversation about it, like, yeah, did we not like acknowledge that 100 pages ago? And like, I don't know if he was just supposed to be kind of oblivious or if it was just way too obvious, but it kind of got to a point where it irritated me a little bit. Like, I don't want to say anything because it might be considered spoilers, but it happened a few times. But really enjoyed it. Like, it's such a good book in like every capacity. Like, it's one of those books where I can't really talk about the things it did really well because it's just like everything. Like, everything it did was just like good. Like, it's just really good. So I have the next 2 books in this trilogy on hold from the library for me to read because I must read more. And I'm really curious where it's going to go because the way it ended was kind of like the way a standalone would end. Like, there's definitely more in this world, but like they kind of wrapped up the story that was happening. But gonna read more probably this month. Probably finish the trilogy soon. I'm really enjoying it. It's a good start to the trilogy, and I will probably read a great deal of Robin Hobb in 2024. So, thank you for showing up to this video. As I said in the beginning, which was like in July. Oh, it's been a long time. As I said in like July, I will link all the people who recommended me books down below if they have social media. And I'll have a list of books in the description. So definitely go check out all of them, especially if the kind of books that they recommended me are something you would enjoy. I will also link the first vlog I did on this, as well as my TBR that I did last year. So go check those out, but I will be filming an entire wrap-up for this project shortly, hopefully. But this was such a genuinely wonderful experience. Like, I enjoyed to some degree every single book on this list. Like, I didn't give anything 2 stars or below. Like, everything was 3 stars, and to be honest, the majority of them were 4s or even 1.5. Like, and that is like really good for me. So fantastic project. I had a wonderful time. I did succeed at like 7 p.m. on the 31st. So I have nothing but positive things to say about my experience, and I am eternally grateful to everyone who recommended me a book and anyone who showed up to watch this experience. So thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books, what you thought of them if you have, and as always, I will see y'all again soon.